of the most fascinating parts of astral projection is the possibility of meeting your spirit guides. Over the years, I've had my own experiences with these encounters, and in this episode, I want to share what I've learned, both from my personal journey and from helping others explore these experiences. We'll talk about what spirit guides are, how to prepare for a meeting, techniques that can help you set your intention, and what to look for if you have an encounter of your own. Hi, welcome back to the Astral Gateway podcast. I'm Norit Weiss-Davicioni. Before we begin, if you haven't listened to the previous episode on lucid dreaming, I encourage you to check it out. Lucid dreaming and astral projection share many similarities, and the awareness skills developed through one practice can support the other. Okay, let's begin. Before we explore how you can approach meeting your own spirit guides, I want to share a few of my personal experiences. These encounters can be difficult to describe, and sometimes the best way to understand them is through the experiences themselves. My first encounter happened after I had been consciously asking for a connection with a guide. I'd set an intention, but I wasn't attached to how it would happen. I didn't know if I would meet a being, see a form, hear a voice, or experience something completely different. Then, one night, while I was deep in an out of body state, that intention was answered in a way I never expected. There was no dramatic appearance, no voice speaking to me, no figure standing in front of me. Instead, I became aware of a presence, a powerful energy surrounded by deep indigo light. It wasn't something I saw with my physical eyes. It was more like a knowing, a direct understanding that came through the experience itself. And somehow, without words, I knew her name was Neidan. What fascinated me was that I had never heard that name before. I hadn't read about it and I had no previous connection to it. Yet, in that moment, it felt completely clear and natural, as if I simply knew. And I wanted to stay longer. I wanted to understand more and ask questions and receive guidance. But then I just felt a gentle pull, a sense that the experience was coming to an end. It wasn't sudden or frightening. It felt almost as if I was being guided back, as though I had received exactly what I was meant to receive at the moment. When I returned to my body, I noticed something had shifted. At first, I couldn't explain it. I simply felt different, more aware, more focused, as if something within me had been activated. Over the following weeks, I noticed changes. My intuition felt stronger, my energy work deepened, my meditation practice seemed to open into new layers. I didn't immediately connect these changes to the encounter. It was only later that I came across the word Neidan again and discovered its connection to Taoist internal alchemy, the cultivation and refinement of inner energy. That was the moment everything clicked. The name I received wasn't just a name, it was connected to the exact process I had been experiencing: transformation from within, working with energy, and discovering that what we often search for outside ourselves may already exist within us. And looking back, I still reflect on what Nidan truly was. Was it an external guide, a higher aspect of consciousness, a deeper part of myself reflecting something back to me? I don't know if I need to have a definite answer. What matters is the impact of the experience. The guidance didn't come through words or instructions, it came through energy. It was an invitation to look within, develop awareness, and trust the process of transformation unfolding inside me. And perhaps that is one of the most meaningful parts of these encounters. Sometimes they don't give us all the answers, sometimes they simply open a door. After my experience with Nidan, I continued exploring the astral and setting intentions before my experiences. I learned that some of the encounters that affect us the most are not always the ones we expect or even the ones we ask for. Another experience happened later during that space between waking and dreaming. I was moving through the vibrations and entering a dream state where I suddenly became aware that I was dreaming. At the moment I realized that everything around me became still, I knew I had an opportunity to repeat my intention. There was one thing I wanted to experience. I wanted to see my soul. The moment I asked for this, everything changed. A voice appeared. It was speaking to me in Hebrew. The voice was deep and resonant, but what stood out most was its presence. It wasn't frightening and it wasn't trying to comfort me. It simply felt calm and aware. As the voice spoke, the entire environment just disappeared. There were no objects, no scenery, nothing around me. Everything became like a single soft light brown color. It was as if I was surrounded by a completely different space. And I couldn't understand every word being spoken, but one part stayed with me. The voice spoke about mistakes he had made with his wife in the past. He spoke with honesty and reflection, and at some point he said, I wasn't always right. That sentence stayed with me because it felt human. The message wasn't about perfection, it was about growth, about being able to look back, recognize where we have changed, and learn from the experiences that shaped us. Then I asked, who are you? The answer came simply, Abraham the patriarch. I was surprised. I knew the name, of course, but I wasn't someone who was focused on biblical figures or looking for a religious experience. I wasn't expecting Abraham. I wasn't thinking about Abraham at all. I had simply asked to see my soul. And this was the experience that unfolded. I asked again, who are you? And again the answer came, Abraham, the patriarch. Then the voice began to fade. The light brown space slowly dissolved, and the experience came to an end. What stayed with me afterwards wasn't only the encounter itself, but the message behind it. What stood out to me was that Abraham didn't appear as someone who had never made mistakes. Instead, the experience seemed to carry a message about honesty, humility, and transformation. Looking back, I found it interesting that I entered through the vibrations, but what followed felt different from a typical astral experience. It felt like I had entered another layer of consciousness, somewhere between dreaming, astral exploration, and a deeper state of awareness. Over time, the meaning continued to unfold. The lesson I took from it was that real transformation doesn't happen by ignoring what needs healing. Whether it's within ourselves, our relationships, or our lives, growth begins when we are willing to look honestly at what is underneath. For me, that became one of the deeper teachings from this experience. We cannot build something strong on an unstable foundation. Growth requires awareness, honesty, and the willingness to return to the roots of what needs to change. The third encounter happened much later, and in many ways, it brought the previous two experiences together. By this point, I had already explored many altered states of awareness and had experienced things that stayed with me long after they ended. So, one morning, after projecting my consciousness into objects, I found myself in that strange in between state. I wasn't fully asleep, but I wasn't fully awake either. I became aware of the room around me, but everything looked different. It felt as if the entire room had shifted or rotated. The windows seemed to be on the floor. My usual sense of perspective had completely changed. What was interesting was that it didn't feel strange or confusing. In that moment, it simply felt like the reality I was experiencing. In that state, I asked for guidance. Then a male voice appeared, almost as if it was coming from the space near the window, from somewhere beyond what I could see. Before I even understood the words, I noticed the feeling of the voice. It was warm, calm, and familiar. There was a sense of safety and connection. He asked me what I wanted. I answered, I want to grow. He replied, everyone wants to grow. So I clarified. I said that I wanted to evolve, to become better than I was before. The conversation continued naturally. He spoke partly in Hebrew and partly in English, almost like we were having an ordinary conversation. At one point, he told me that I had connected with guides before and that this connection was always available. Then I asked, who are you? The answer came, Seth. He told me he had 3 things to tell me, and then I woke up. At first, I felt disappointed. I wondered what those 3 things were and why I hadn't received the message. But with time, I began to see it differently because what stayed with me wasn't information, it wasn't a sentence or a teaching, it was the feeling of the experience. Later that day, while I was driving my daughter somewhere, the realization came to me. When Seth said he had 3 things to tell me, I assumed there were 3 messages I had missed. But maybe there weren't things I need to hear. Maybe there were things I needed to experience. The first was Neidan. That encounter was connected to inner transformation, working with energy, awareness, and discovering something deeper within myself. The second was Abraham. That experience carried a message about reflection, humility, healing, and the importance of building from a stronger foundation. And the third was Seth. His message was different. It wasn't something I could easily translate into words. It was more about intuition, feeling, and a knowing that went beyond explanation. In some ways, trying to explain it takes away from it because the experience itself was the message. Looking back, I see these 3 encounters as different parts of the same journey. What makes it even more meaningful is that the first 2 experiences were already part of my book. Seth appeared after the book was completed. It felt like a reminder that the journey was still continuing. Not that I had missed something, but that there was always more to explore. I wasn't given 3 answers, I was given 3 experiences, 3 moments of connection, each revealing something different and together creating a deeper understanding that I continue to explore. Through these experiences, I started to understand something important about meeting guides. Many people imagine a guide appearing in a very specific way as a being standing in front of them, giving clear answers or instructions. Sometimes experiences may happen that way, but my own encounters showed me that guidance can come in many forms. Neidan came through energy and a feeling of transformation. Abraham came through a conversation and a message that continued unfolding over time. This is why meditation can be such an important part of this journey. The quieter the mind becomes, the easier it is to notice experiences that are often missed when we are caught in constant mental noise. Now, if you want to explore this, I would begin with a simple intention. Not an expectation of what should happen, but an openness to connect and receive whatever experience comes. Sometimes the meaning of an encounter isn't clear right away. Sometimes it reveals itself slowly through changes in your awareness, your perspective, and the way you see yourself. That has certainly been my experience. So, if you want to explore the possibility of meeting a guide during an astral experience, where do you begin? For me, the foundation has always been developing a deeper awareness of yourself. Before we explore these experiences, it helps to become familiar with your own inner world, your thoughts, emotions, and the quiet moments when your awareness becomes more present. Meditation, reflection, and spending time observing your own mind can help create that foundation. Intention has always played an important role in my experiences. Before meeting Aidan, I had been asking to connect with a guide. Before the experience with Abraham, I asked to see my soul. In both cases, I had a clear intention, but I didn't know what the experience would look like. I wasn't expecting a certain type of guide, a certain message, or a specific sign. And I think this is where many people struggle. They imagine what the experience should be before it happens. They expect a certain appearance, a certain conversation, or a dramatic moment of recognition. But these experiences can unfold in many different ways. Sometimes guidance comes through a voice, sometimes through an image, sometimes through a feeling, a symbol, or a sudden understanding that arrives without explanation. Before your practice, you can set a simple intention such as, I would like to connect with a guide who can offer wisdom and support on my journey. Then allow yourself to be open to whatever experience comes. Afterward, pay attention not only to what happened during the experience, but also to what changes within you. Do you see something differently? Do you feel a shift in your awareness? Does a new understanding appear days or even weeks later? Sometimes the meaning of an experience reveals itself slowly. This is why I recommend keeping a journal. These encounters can be subtle, and the first impression is not always the complete picture. Writing everything down allows you to return to the experience later and notice connections that were not obvious at the time. When I look back at my experiences with Nadan, Abraham, and Seth, I can see that the understanding unfolded gradually. I didn't have all the answers when each encounter happened. The meaning revealed itself over time. And perhaps that is one of the most interesting parts of these experiences. They invite us to keep exploring, keep observing, and continue learning about ourselves and consciousness. One thing I noticed from my own experiences is that awareness plays a major role. These encounters happened during states where I had learned to recognize the transition between waking, dreaming, and deeper states of consciousness. Those moments between sleep and wakefulness can be especially interesting because the body is deeply relaxed while awareness can remain present. But your state of mind matters as well. If you enter the experience with too much excitement, pressure, or the need for something specific to happen, it can become harder to simply observe what unfolds. The ability to stay calm, present, and curious is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. Another important part of this journey is learning to recognize different forms of communication. In everyday life, we are used to words and physical senses, but these experiences can communicate in a different way. Sometimes you may receive a complete understanding in a single moment. Like with Nidan, there were no words, but there was a strong sense of knowing. With Abraham, the message came through a conversation. And with Seth, what stayed with me most was the feeling of connection and recognition. These experiences taught me that there isn't one single way a guide encounter happens. Many people dismiss their experiences because they're waiting for something obvious. They think that if they don't see a figure or hear a voice, then nothing meaningful happened. But awareness can express itself in much quieter ways: a feeling, an insight, a change in perspective. Sometimes those subtle moments are the ones that continue working within us long after the experience ends. When approaching this practice, I would encourage curiosity and respect. Instead of focusing only on receiving answers, pay attention to what the experience teaches you. The deeper journey is not only about meeting a guide, it's about expanding your awareness, developing your intuition, and exploring the nature of consciousness. Now, I want to share a simple practice that you can try if you would like to explore this yourself. Choose a time when your body is naturally tired, but you can still maintain some awareness. Many people find the early morning hours helpful after several hours of sleep, when the body can return to sleep while the mind remains more alert. Begin by relaxing and allowing the events of the day to settle. Bring your attention inward. When you feel ready, set your intention. I'm open to meeting a guide who can offer wisdom and support on my journey. Then allow yourself to enter the space between waking and sleeping. Notice what appears. You may experience vibrations, sounds, sensations, images, or a feeling that your awareness is shifting. If you enter an out of body state, return to your intention. You can ask inwardly, is there a guide who wishes to connect with me? Then wait and observe. Give the experience space. Sometimes people become so focused on searching for something that they miss the subtle changes happening around them. A presence may appear, a voice may come through. You may receive an image, a symbol, or simply a deep feeling of knowing. When you return, write everything down. Record what happened, but also record how you felt. The emotions, sensations, and impressions can reveal just as much as the experience itself. And remember, meeting a guide is only one part of this journey. Becoming more aware in dreams, remembering your experiences, and learning to navigate these states are all important steps in understanding your own consciousness. With practice, these experiences become easier to recognize, and your relationship with your own awareness continues to deepen. As you continue exploring these states, one of the most important things you can develop is trust in your own awareness. In the beginning, it is completely natural to question what you experience. You might ask yourself, was that real? Was it my imagination? How do I make sense of what happened? These questions are part of the process. When we experience something outside our usual understanding, the mind naturally tries to analyze and categorize it. But sometimes the deeper meaning of an experience does not come from finding an immediate explanation. Sometimes it reveals itself through the way it changes you afterward. So pay attention to what happens beyond the experience itself. Do you feel a deeper connection to yourself? Do you notice a shift in the way you see things? Do you feel inspired to continue exploring your inner world? These reflections can often tell you more than trying to find an answer right away. It is also important to remember that everyone's experiences will be different. For some people, guidance may come through a dream. For others, it may happen during meditation, an out of body experience, or a moment of sudden insight in everyday life. There is no single way these experiences have to appear. The more you practice awareness, meditation, and observation, the more familiar you become with the different ways your consciousness communicates with you. Over time, you may begin to notice patterns, recognize subtle shifts, and develop a deeper understanding of your own experiences. In the next episode, we'll explore a topic that comes up often when people begin exploring astral projection and altered states of consciousness: fear. Fear can appear in many forms during these experiences, and for many people, it becomes one of the biggest challenges they face. We'll look at why fear appears, what it can teach us, and how to work with it so it doesn't prevent us from exploring these deeper states of awareness. I'll share insights from my own experiences along with practical tools that can help you approach these states with more calm, confidence, and understanding. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Astral Gateway podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I invite you to follow the podcast and leave a rating or review. It helps others discover the show and continue exploring topics like astral projection, lucid dreaming, and consciousness. And if you've had an experience with a guide or you're exploring these states yourself, I would love to hear about your journey. Okay, until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and trust the journey of discovery.